Welcome, everybody. I'm super excited for this banking and the climate crisis presentation that we have arranged for tonight. The idea behind the presentation was to start a conversation within Resilient Palisades about our banks and about what we can do about where we keep our money so that we can limit our contributions to funding the fossil fuel industry. And it's not an easy sort of terrain to figure out. What should you do? Where should you put your money and how should you put it there? And so I really my hope is that this is the start of a conversation within Resilient Palisades, that we can begin exploring as a community how we can do this difficult, simple, but not easy thing, as Jim put it, how we can do it together. So I want to invite you, if you are inspired to think more about moving your money by the end of this presentation, do reach out to me, because I think this is something that we should be doing together as a community, that if we work together, we can be much more effective at making change than if we each on our own try to do our thing in isolation. So with that, I'm really, really happy to welcome Jim Thompson, our speaker this evening. He has an impressively long bio. So in order to give him some time to speak, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I do want to, but I encourage you to check out the website, thisiswhatwedid.org, and you'll find more information on his bio and so much else there. But briefly, Jim Thompson founded the Positive Coaching Alliance. It's a movement to transform youth sports. He was director of the Stanford MBA Public Management Program, and he is himself a Stanford MBA grad. He was named an Ashoka Fellow, and he received numerous prestigious awards for his contributions to youth sports. More recently, he founded This Is What We Did, a climate response organization that's in the Bay Area. And that's how I came to learn about his important work. When I was noodling around looking at options for moving money to better banks, I came across this organization and was really, really impressed by the work that Jim is doing with the organization. So with that, I'm just going to hand over and let us all hear from him.
No, but I didn't.
Thank you, Ingrid. Some of you may have been ready to see me last fall, and my wife and I were giving blood, and he got sick. I wasn't. I drove her over there, and I was sitting out in the car reading, and she didn't come out. And so I finally went inside, and she had some problem with it. In fact, her doctor told her, "You have given your last blood." So she's fine, and I'm really glad to be here. So give me just a second here. Okay, really grateful to be asked to speak here. There is, I've found I have lots of discouragement when I work on climate change, and one refuge I've found is poetry. Adrienne Rich, who is an incredible poet, she's dead now, of course, she said, "Poetry can break open locked chambers of possibility, restore numbed zones to feeling, and recharge desire." And I don't know about you, but I've had lots of numbed zones since I left Positive Coaching Alliance and started working on climate change full time. I wonder if I could, I'm a sports guy, worked in youth sports for more than 20 years. And I wonder if we could form a little team here of 5 people, including me. There are 4 verses here to this poem by Wendell Berry. I'll read the title, and if somebody could pick up the first verse and then somebody else the second verse, and see if we can kind of make it like we've rehearsed this. Our Real Work by Wendell Berry.
Thank you, Claire, as always. Take care. Bye.
Okay, that's pretty faint. Thank you, though. Somebody jump in here and
It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work.
And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey.
The mind that is not baffled is not employed.
The impeded stream is the one that's
about 25 years ago or so, I started a nonprofit called Positive Coaching Alliance, as Ingrid mentioned. This is my son, who is now 44. So this is a long time ago. About 2.5 years ago, I stepped away from the CEO role at Positive Coaching Alliance. The first workshop we did in 25 years ago, there were 5 people in the room. 3 of us worked for Positive Coaching Alliance. When I left the CEO position, we were doing 3,500 live workshops a year. So that's almost 10 a day across the whole year. And then for 20 some years, I knew what my work was. And then all of a sudden I didn't anymore. I took a sabbatical and I dived into learning about climate change. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea how bad it was nor how quickly it was coming. One of the things I did was I got trained by Al Gore's Climate Reality Project. And I just wonder, is there anybody here who's gone through the Climate Reality Project training? I see one person. Lisa, thank you. And Valeria? Fantastic. One of the things I learned, I like to say it was Al Gore and me and 1,200 of his closest friends in the Minneapolis Convention Center for 3 days. One of the things I learned is that Al Gore likes slides. He really likes slides. There were hundreds and hundreds of slides. One slide in particular captured my attention. James Hansen, who has been called the Paul Revere of the climate movement, he was with NASA 30 some years ago. He tried to warn us about this. And he was trying to communicate how much heat we are putting into the planet every day. And so he said, imagine the atomic bomb that the United States dropped on Hiroshima. You have that in your head. I wonder if you guys would do something for me. When I say go, would you blink your eyes as fast as you can 10 times? People willing to do that? I see a few hands. Is that all? Thank you. When I say go, blink your eyes as fast as you can for 10 seconds. No, I'm sorry. Blink your eyes 10 times as fast as you can. Go. Okay, if you kept doing that for 24 hours, plus a little bit more, you would come to 400,000 blinks. And that's the number that was on the slide. Today, there is the equivalent of 400,000 atomic bombs of heat that the Earth is warmer today than it was yesterday, every single day. Now, when I try to get my hands around that, my arms around it, I find that it's not surprising that 68% of all the animal life on the planet is disappeared. And that was before somewhere between 1 billion and 2 billion animals in Australia. Wildfires 2 years ago were destroyed, or 1 billion sea animals were destroyed in the Pacific Northwest due to the heat dome that they had. Wildfires, floods, y'all know that, and Ingrid cautioned me that this is a very well-informed group, so I don't need to go into that. But if we're going to fight climate change, there's a concept that we need to understand that's really important, and it's called a sacrifice zone. Anybody heard of that term before, sacrifice zone? A sacrifice zone is an area where the powers that be do not care what happens. They don't care what happens to the land, to the water, to the air, or to the people in that sacrifice zone. Robert Hubble, who's been called the father of environmental justice, did a study a while back. He looked at the city of Houston. He found that 25% of the people in Houston were Black, and 82% of the solid waste facilities were situated in Black areas. Could be a coincidence? I don't think so. I think it was a sacrifice zone. I grew up in North Dakota, so I paid attention to the Dakota Access Pipeline. I really love this picture, especially because this guy right here has a Green Bay Packers hat on. The Dakota Access Pipeline was originally routed near the state capital of Bismarck, which is like 97% white. No protests were held, but all of a sudden, magically, the pipeline was rerouted away from the city to go right over the water supply of the Standing Rock Reservation. Again, we have to ask, is that a coincidence? No. It's a sacrifice zone. Now, in a couple of years ago, a colleague of mine, the air quality in the Bay Area was so bad that she took her kids up to Tahoe for 2 weeks so that they could breathe fresh air during those 2 weeks. Well, one of the things that's happening with climate change is the entire planet is becoming a sacrifice zone. This is what Lake Tahoe area looked like in September, and it came just a whisker away from burning up. There are no longer any safe places on this planet. So when I was in college at McAllister in St. Paul, my roommate Craig bought an old VW van. Some of you may have actually had a van like this. One day I'm in the kitchen at the house we were renting, and Craig is working on his van. And all of a sudden he starts screaming. I run out as quickly as I can. And I'm trying to find the leverage point because his thumb is caught between two pieces of steel. And I'm looking at this thinking, okay, how can I relieve the pressure on him? And I use all my strength to try to force those two pieces of steel apart, to no avail. Another roommate of ours, David, came running out. He looked at the situation and he saw where the leverage was, and he put his force on that leverage, and the steel pieces opened up to the point where Craig could get his thumb out. I think this is a really good analogy for climate change because there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of people like I was who are putting all their energy into something that's not going to move those pieces of steel and take the pressure off the planet. So I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, where's the leverage? What's the key to effective action, and where can we find the leverage? There are three crucial flows of money. The first one is our money to what I call climate bad banks. And I hope this phrase catches on because they are awful corporate citizens. The second flow of money is from the banks to the fossil fuel industry. In June, a bunch of my friends and I went out to, actually, including some people I didn't know, but we formed an affinity group and we drove to Minnesota, northern Minnesota, where Enbridge Line 3 was being constructed. Now, this is an area where my parents had a lake cabin and my wife's parents had a lake cabin. This was home to me. They call it the land of 10,000 lakes, but there are way more than 10,000 lakes in Minnesota. And this dirty fossil fuel coming in from Canada was threatening all of those areas. And what made it possible was bank financing. They can't do this without the bank. So that's the second flow of the money. The third flow of money is from the fossil fuel industry to politicians. Now, I want to make a statement here. We have to interrupt these flows of money or all the good ideas in the world won't see the light of day. Oh, wait a minute. Let's say it again. We have to interrupt these flows of money or all the good ideas in the world won't see the light of day. You agree? Disagree? You need more time to think about it? How important is it to interrupt these flows of money? And this is not a rhetorical question. I want to open this up. If people have something to say, is it absolutely crucial that we interrupt these flows of money or not? When I did positive coaching workshops, I love the basketball coaches because you ask them a question, they answer. Baseball coaches would sit back and like, are you guys basketball coaches or baseball coaches? How important is it to interrupt these flows of money? Ingrid.
Very.
Essential.
Okay. Is anybody who feels like, you know, it's a good thing to do, but it's not really crucial? Okay, well, that's good. I really do believe that if we don't interrupt these flows of money, and if we start with the first one, our money into these climate bad banks. There's also investment money and there's insurance that covers these pipelines. I think the place where we have the most leverage is with these banks. We cannot reason with the fossil fuel industry. They're not open to being persuaded. One estimate I saw, there's $22 trillion, $22 trillion of fossil fuel assets that are in the ground, but they're on the balance sheets of fossil fuel companies. Now, I wasn't the best accounting student at Stanford Business School, but I understand enough to know that if they don't get those assets out of the ground, they will have to declare them as stranded assets and the value of their company will go way down. And in fact, they'll probably go out of business. So the fossil fuel industry is going to do everything they can to get that oil and gas out of the ground and burn it. And we're already putting so much heat into there. It's just absolutely crucial and critical that we stop that. So I think a really crucial understanding, many of you probably know who Bill Mckibben is. If you don't, it'd be good to learn because he's, I think, one of the most important people in the world. Would somebody, maybe somebody who hasn't read something yet, would somebody read the 2 paragraphs from Bill Mckibben here out loud for us?
A crucial and necessary understanding. I thought we were in an argument, but we were in a fight. The science has been clear for 20 years. We've won the argument. Now we have to figure out how to win the fight. It's not that global warming is like a world war. It is a world war, and we are losing.
So we're in a fight. You know, some of you know who Thich Nhat Hanh was. He just died a couple days ago. My wife and I are both Christians and Buddhists, and we've just gotten a lot from Thich Nhat Hanh over the years. And he created something called Engaged Buddhism, and he was able to work really hard to help people, to save people, to eliminate suffering without demonizing the people he was trying to get to change. And I think that's really important that we do that. Are the leaders of the fossil fuel industry, not the people who work there, but the leaders of it, who have known about climate change for 30 or 40 years, and instead of helping us make the transition, use disinformation like the tobacco industry to keep it going? Are there problems with those people? Yes, but we do not have to become violent or I don't mean physically violent, but we don't need to become nasty about it. So this is my wife, and when I took this picture, we did a full page ad in the San Jose Mercury News and 2 other Bay Area news group papers. And when I took this picture, I didn't realize that it was being photobombed by our dog. Like, this is supposed to show you how excited we are about this full page ad. And Buster just, he's just not getting with the program. So let me get to the really practical part of this now. This is our website. This is what we did. .org. This is what we did. We named it this way because it is, in our opinion, the answer to the ultimate question. The ultimate question is, what did you do to fight climate change? That's me and my granddaughter, Lila. Elsewhere on the website is my grandson, Rafi, and I see them 5 or 10 years from now as the world deteriorates, saying to me, Grandpa Jim, what did you do to fight climate change anyway? And I want to be able to say, this is what we did. So let's go to the actions piece and go to move your money. So there's some stuff in here about why it's important. I've already talked about that. You already know that. But what if you're ready to act? What can our website do for you? Well, first of all, you've got 3 choices. One is you can do it yourself, and I'll show you the information and tools that are on our website. But you also can request a coach. We will have somebody, if you email to us and say, I'm ready to move my money and I'd like somebody to work with me on this, then we'll provide you a coach. Or you can organize a cohort. If there are 5 people in Resilient Palisades, for example, who want to do this together, 5 or more, we will work with you over a period of 4 weeks. One of the things the cohort does that's so great is, first of all, if you do it with your friends, it's fun. And I don't think anybody's ever said divesting from a climate bad bank is fun. It's the relationships we have with banks are sticky. A student of mine from Stanford Business School who works for Wells Fargo now, he said, they're sticky relationships. They're hard to get out of. And it's not a coincidence. The banks try to make it sticky. They want you to do direct deposits and auto pays because those are things that keep you from moving the money. So 3 different ways you can do this. One is do it yourself, and we'll talk about the tools you have. Secondly, you can request a coach. And third, organize a cohort and we'll work with you. So let's go to what we have in terms of tools. So first of all, what's the process? And here are the steps to go through to get divested from these climate bad banks. The first one is, what's important to you? And in a bank. Let's go back to move your money. And so the first thing is to find out what you want from a bank. Okay, that's the one we just did. So here's a checklist for you. Oh, by the way, you can download these so you can write on them, but you can do this online. You can put, these are PDFs that are editable. So you can put in here mobile banking and online banking, gotta have that. ATMs widely and accessible, gotta have that, whatever. The big banks used to have a big advantage over credit unions in that Wells Fargo ATMs all over the world, or all over everywhere I've been. Almost no credit unions have that kind of coverage, but they have relationships with each other through the STAR network, so that our Wells Fargo ATM was in the place where we do most of our grocery shopping. And it bothered me. It didn't bother me enough to stop it, because I don't want to be affiliated with that climate bad organization. But it bothered me that it was no longer so easy to get cash when I needed it. And then I discovered that in the same parking lot, it was a credit union, not my credit union, but it was connected to my credit union, so I can deposit money there, and I can get cash. So to go through this, safety deposit boxes, for example, it's going to be hard to find a safety deposit box because banks don't make much money on it. But so anyway, the first thing is to go through this checklist and see, what do I need? And then how do I find a climate-friendly banking institution? So there's places here where you can look up credit unions. You can put your zip code in and it'll show you the credit unions near you. Here's a link that takes you to credit unions that are focused on community development. So maybe you want more than just to be with a credit union that doesn't help destroy the planet. You want a credit union that is investing in the community or something like that. So these are some of the credit unions that our members who have gone through our cohorts have used, and you'll see they're all over the country. Some climate-friendly banks, Amalgamated, which is affiliated with labor unions, Aspiration and Atmos are both only online. Beneficial State Bank, some of you may know who Tom Steyer is. He ran for president. He's an investor in the San Francisco Bay Area. His wife, Kat Taylor, was a classmate of mine at Stanford Business School, and she started Beneficial State Bank. So, and then about credit cards, there are a good example of some Green America credit cards. And I love careful, and I want to say too, we don't recommend specific banks, but the people that we have worked with have used these and they're happy with them. I love careful readers. And I got an email from, actually it was a guy I knew through Positive Coaching Alliance many years ago. And he said, if you go to this website, Green America, it has a credit card through Sunrise Banks. See Sunrise Banks here? And it runs its credit card through a company that is owned by US Bank. Well, US Bank's a climate bad bank. So, you know, we're gonna do something about this. Either we'll take Sunrise Banks out of here, or we'll put, you know, banking with them is great. They do a lot of good stuff in the community, but don't get their credit card. So move your money tracking sheet. We just found that it's really nice to be able to track this. And this is a sample for my wife and I getting out of Wells Fargo. Had to contact my employer to, actually, I wanna share this story with you. I was organizing, my wife and I were organizing demonstrations at local Wells Fargo branches. And we were handing out flyers to people saying, move your money out of this climate bad bank. And at a certain point, Sandy said to me, you know, we're being a little hypocritical because we haven't gotten our money out of Wells Fargo yet. So I was like, okay, we got to do this. So first thing I had to find out is, how could I change my direct deposit from my employer? And my employer uses a HR company. Had to find my, you know, where my account was and my password, etc. I got all that done. And then it asked me 2 security questions. One was, where did you meet your wife? And who is your favorite teacher? So I said very confidently, St. Paul, Minnesota, and Polly Ames. And it said, wrong. Well, I know Polly Ames is my favorite teacher. I know my wife in St. Paul. This is a kind of glitch that happens. And if I hadn't been in doing what I'm doing, that's the point at which I would have said, I don't have time for this. I'll come back later. And I would not have come back later. But it was 10 o'clock on Friday morning, and we had a cohort meeting at noon that day. And the week before, I had told people I was going to figure out how to get my paycheck out of Wells Fargo. And I stuck with it so that at noon that day, I could say I did it. And that's one of the things that these cohorts help us with. They help us make public commitments to the people in our group. It's not somebody else telling me, Jim, you got to move your money. You got to figure out how to get your paycheck to your credit union. It was me saying that to me. I need some help. I want to do this. And I'm going to tell you all what I'm going to do before next Friday or whenever the meeting is. Identify all your direct pays, locate an ATM that works. As it turned out, like I said, it was right outside my grocery store. And then get to all the direct pay billing companies to reroute to a new credit union. And let me show you the move your money without my example in it. And you'll see that you can write on this, you can download this and write on online. It's a PDF, and you can put your actions in when it's completed. I want to say one more thing, and then I want to stop and find out what kind of questions you have. If you just move your money and don't tell people about it, that is a lost opportunity. So here is, and again, you can download this, and again, you can edit it to PDF. Here's a letter to Jamie Dimon. You don't have to use this one. You can write your own, but it's here if you want it. And then we encourage you to put your, sign your name, put your address, etc. And then if you know it, copy the name of the local branch manager. And you can find it easily. You just, you look in the phone book, not the phone book, but you look it up online. And I did this. I sent a letter to Jamie Dimon because we had a credit card with him. But I also went into our Wells Fargo branch, and I had a copy of the letter, not to Jamie Dimon, but the one I sent to the Wells Fargo CEO. And I said, is the branch manager here? And her name was Felicia, very nice young woman. And she came over and we talked for 10 or 15 minutes. And I told her why I was leaving the bank. And she said, I'm going to escalate this. And a week or so later, I got a call from somebody in the executive office of the Wells Fargo. That person did not call me because I sent a letter to Eric Scharf, the CEO of Wells Fargo. She called me because the local branch manager escalated up the chain. Now, you might say, like, who cares the amount of money that we have in the banks, unless you're way more wealthy than I am? The amount of money we have isn't really enough to get Jamie Dimon's attention. Who cares if we leave a Chase branch or a Wells Fargo branch? Who cares about it? Again, not a rhetorical question. Who cares? Okay, I'll make it a rhetorical question. The branch manager cares. Every month they have to report how many new accounts they got and how many old accounts they got and why they lost these accounts. So it's really useful to go in and talk to the branch manager. Let me just look at the chat room and see if there's any.
I'm sure people have a lot of questions to ask. So perhaps we should officially open to Q&A. And what I would suggest is that either you write your question into the chat or raise your hand, and then Jim can call on you.
Yes, any questions?
And Susan, if you are there and want to elaborate on that, please go ahead now.
Yeah, I posed that question at the very beginning, when you started to tell us that there were these three paths by which the money was going, and you answered the question.
Okay,
You've
thank
been
you.
answering it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Gail.
It seems a daunting task to extricate myself from Bank of America mortgage on my home. What to be done about that?
Well, when we started, we were looking at savings accounts, checking accounts, and credit cards. But we had some people who came and said, "I want to move I want to change my mortgage," and they did it. Changing your mortgage is it's a big decision, and depending on rates that you got when you got the mortgage versus rates now, you need to look at that. But banks make a lot of money from mortgages, so if you do that, it's a good thing. And I would say the people who have done it through working with us have found that it's not so difficult as it is lengthy. It takes them a while to find a new place. It takes for a while for them to get approved for a new mortgage, but they didn't say, "Wow, this is really difficult." So I encourage you to look at it. And again, if you want a coach from us, or if you and some other people want to do it together, we'll form a cohort for you. Yeah, Bart.
Jim, just a question. Moving your mortgage is one thing, but it's been my limited experience in dealing with mortgage companies and talking to people that dealt with them, is that even if you do move, your mortgage can be resold to somebody else or sold to somebody else in a secondary market, and you have absolutely no control over that. So not that it's not a good idea, but it just seems like it might be a lot of effort for a very short-term gain, and then more frustration on top of it.
A couple thoughts there, Bart. Thank you. If you move your money from Bank of America or Citibank, for example, you've taken an action, and you can share that action with the CEO. You can share it with the local branch, and that's having some kind of impact. Usually when those when those loans are sold, they're sold to companies that are used to, it's their business to process those things. They're typically not Bank of America, Citibank, et cetera. So yeah, there is, I said before, the relationship is sticky, but taking action like moving your mortgage has an impact.
Jim, there are a number of questions in the chat as well.
Thank you, Ingrid. If we invest in a company like Fidelity or Vanguard, how do we move our money to green-only investments? We haven't really focused on investments at this point. We really focused on moving money out of the banks. I have a cousin who works for Merrill Lynch, and Merrill Lynch is owned by Bank of America. So we talk about this a lot. You can, with Merrill Lynch or any company, you can say, I want to only do green investments, but they're still making money at it. So I can't really, I'm certainly not an expert at this at all, but I know a lot about the banks because we've been working at it. I don't have a good handle on Fidelity or Vanguard. Venmo, PayPal. I don't really have feelings one way or the other. I don't think. Bonnie, was there something specific you wanted to say about them? I can say that a classmate of mine, a friend, was the head of PayPal at one time. He's
Mhm.
now the head of Nike. So, but I think they're pretty. I don't think they have a dog in the fight on climate change, but I may be wrong there.
Yeah, I don't really know anything. I was just curious if you just because they do handle like so like tons of transactions, like if you knew anything about how they were, their
Yeah.
climate practices were.
Is it Sheda or Shida? Sheda? B Corp website also lists goods banks. Great. Yeah, there are a lot of there's several places. I think Mighty Deposits is another one. So if you do the checklist on what you need from a bank and then go looking, I went to Stanford. I'm a member of the Stanford Credit Union. We also joined a self-help credit union, partly because they invest so much in low-income communities. But yeah, there's a lot of places. I think in general, I love credit unions, and they are not involved with financing climate change. They tend to focus on the needs of the local community. But then there are these other banks focusing. And let me just mention Bank of the West, because Bank of the West has done a lot of advertising about how green they are. And from what I know, it does not invest in fossil fuel destruction of the planet. However, it's owned by PNB Paribas, which is a French bank, and it's one of the worst 10 global banks. So if you're banking with Bank of the West, you're helping them become profitable, and that flows back to BNP Paribas. Roseanne, what happens to your credit rating if you cancel all your bad credit cards? This should be done with a little care, and we cover that in the cohort meeting. I had a credit card with Chase for decades, 30, 40 years. And when I agreed to cut my credit card up live on Earth Day on a streaming service, so I had to get out of it. And I discovered that my credit rating went down. It was really good, and now it was really, really good. Now it's really good, but it went down. So we own our house. We're not looking for a loan. If you are looking for a loan, in fact, I have a friend who's in a co-housing development in Spokane, and she's holding off until they get the loan for their place there. If you are looking for a big loan, you want to be careful, because if you have been using a credit card from one place for 30 years and now you go to a new one, your credit rating drops down. It shouldn't be that way, because you still have 30 years of good example, but the system does work that. So you want to be careful of that. And there's a link for green credit cards in one of the documents I showed you, and there are several others too in terms of green. One of our people really fell in love with the credit card that had a picture of a salmon on it, and the profits that they made went to salmon. So you can really find some credit cards that respond to your personal values. So climate-friendly credit cards. We have our credit card now through, it's a Visa card through Stanford Federal Credit Union. And they do have rewards programs. We decided, we're probably not going to be flying as much as we were. I was flying a lot. So we're taking the cash back, and it's great. We get cash into our account every month. So yes, there are credit cards offered through climate-friendly banks and credit unions that do have rewards program. PayPal, Alexander, PayPal pledges net zero carbon emissions by 2040. I am I'm very skeptical of net carbon. The idea sometimes a lot of it is greenwashing. So okay, we're gonna plant trees to compensate for the bad stuff that we're doing. The problem is when you plant a tree, the best carbon sinks are old growth trees. And you plant a new tree, it's going to be 10, 15, 20, 30 years before you get the value of that. So I'm not big on net carbon. I'm big on zero carbon as soon as we can get it. It's like we're in a house that's on fire. And somebody may say, hey, we're doing this good green stuff. But at the same time, there's a big pipe that's putting natural gas, methane, into that house to keep the fire going. We got to stop that. We got to stop it. Deb, by the way, is a friend and goes to our church in Urban Sanctuary, San Jose. Hi, Deb. You can at least put your money in Fidelity or Vanguard in an ESG. Yes, you can ask for the funds, your investments. In fact, I think a lot of investment counselors are getting religion real quickly. I think a year or two ago, you'd say, "Hey, I want to get out of climate bad investments," and they would say, "Oh, it's not good for you." Well, the research shows that among the worst investments over the past 10, 15, 20 years have been fossil fuel companies. Harvard, I don't know if any of you went to Harvard or Yale, but I went to Stanford. The Stanford Cal game is called the big game. Well, Harvard Cal, they don't need an adjective. They just call it the game. And 2 or 3 years ago, both Harvard and Yale students came on at halftime and sat on the field and wouldn't leave. The game was delayed for an hour or so. And the Harvard quarterback filmed a video of himself saying he supported what they were doing. Harvard was saying, no, it's bad, that's bad, it's bad. And then bam, just like that, they switched. They're now not investing in that. And so, yes. How about American Express credit cards, Gail? The research that we've done indicates, there can be reasons for you not to be excited about American Express, but as far as we've been able to tell, they're not investing in fossil fuel destruction of the planet. And Julia, yes, it should be zero carbon, not zero net carbon. Yes. Any questions for anybody live? There's one other thing I want to cover before we get done, but any other questions or thoughts about moving your money? So Julia, LA recently passed legislation on public banking. So public banks are not for individuals. They're for the city government, et cetera. I'm a big supporter of public banking. The only state in the country that has a state bank is my home state, North Dakota. And it's one reason, it's the big reason why North Dakota's economy has done better than other states. People say, oh, it's the oil fields there. No, it's not. It's the state bank. So I'm a big favor of it, but it's not something, unless they change it, it's not something that individuals do. One of the reasons North Dakota didn't have the kind of recessions that other states did is because when the economy goes bad, banks tend to stop loaning. But the state bank of North Dakota kept loaning to farmers, kept loaning to small businesses so they could keep the economy going. I'm high on public banking. I know we want to stop.
Can I just add to that, because it's something I researched a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I spoke with our CD11 representative, our council district representative, about where the city council is on the Los Angeles Public Bank, which is something that we really all should be supporting for just the reasons that Jim was talking about. And in terms of it, the fact of a future public bank, even if you could deposit your money in it, which I didn't know that wasn't a thing. I assumed once there's a public bank, I can put money in it and I can apply for loans from it.
If you're a business person, yes.
I didn't realize individuals couldn't do that. But what our CD11 rep told me was the council is in such an early stage of deliberating. They've really just agreed to deliberate about deliberating, was how he explained it to me, which means that we are really probably several years away in a best case scenario from having an LA public bank, assuming we can get this thing passed. So we should be working really, really hard to support the Los Angeles Public Bank and any public banks in California. But in the meantime, our money is sitting in what Jim calls the bad banks, the climate bad banks. And what are we going to do with our money in the 5, 10, 15 years until we have an alternative? If we even could put our individual funds into a public bank, it's not going to happen anytime very soon.
Thank you. I'd like to, you're welcome, Julia. I'd like to cover just a little bit more. We have initiated a new initiative called Effective Climate Conversations. Catherine Hayhoe, who is one of the most famous climate scientists, she said it turns out that about 3/4 of the people in the US don't hear somebody talk about climate change more than once or twice a year. And if we don't talk about it, why would we care? If we don't care, why would we act? So action begins with conversation. We just finished our 3rd Effective Climate Conversations. This is the Tuesday group. We also had a Thursday group. And Ron Sadler, when we asked him what he thought about it, he said, I've worked in the area of climate change for a long time. I've never thought about conversation as being important. I now know its core to it all. One of the people in our group lives in, what city is Northwestern in? Evanston, Illinois. And she's been leading demonstrations at the local Chase branch. And it was getting kind of stressful. So she decided she needed to have a conversation with the bank branch manager. Now, one of the things we do between these three weeks, 90 minutes a week, learning how to have these conversations and then going out and having a conversation with someone, she chose the Chase Bank branch manager to have her conversation with. And she said, if I hadn't taken this class, it would have been a disaster. But we were able to make connections. He even gave me the names of some people at the bank I could send information to. Now, she's still, last Friday, she was out there again leading this demonstration, but she's got a relationship with the bank. And one of the key things that is really important we need a movement, a huge movement to make the changes we need. And one of the things that has to happen for a movement is it's called shifting loyalties. So the branch manager at the banks, they hear about climate change from their bosses. And when they start to hear about it from their customers, it can shift things. Oops, what happened? I hit the wrong thing. Almost done here. We're starting something called the Climate Conversation Corps of people who want to be able to answer the question, what did I do to fight climate change? I learned how to have effective conversation with people and recruit people to the movement. I'm going to go past this. I just want to mention, this is maybe my favorite picture in the whole world. This is my mother, Marjorie Score, in 1940s. She's working in a bomber factory in San Diego. She's, a small town girl from North Dakota, and she became a Rosie the Riveter. We need to have that kind of a movement to create the kind of mobilization we had in World War II. A lot of historians say the big reason that the Allies beat the Axis powers was because of our manufacturing capability. And here's Jim Moran's, I really can't look at this without feeling like he is. What did you do in the war against global climate change, Granddaddy? And let me just end with this statement by St. Francis. I heard a talk recently, and the woman said, St. Francis of Assisi died when he was young, and shortly before he died, he said, I am at peace because I have done what I have been given to do. And I actually have a piece of paper up on my wall here. It says, what is it that I have been given to do? And I think that's the question we all need to ask ourselves. What is it that we've been given to do in the greatest threat in the history of humanity? I'd love to work with you guys on moving your money and on the climate conversations. And you'll see, because of Jessie, the woman who had the conversation with the climate bad bank branch manager, they do come together. Ingrid, back to you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Jim so much for sharing with us, not just information about the facts about how to move our money, but also just the inspiration that I think some of us, sometimes in this work, we forget. We don't always focus on why are we doing this and why is it so important. So thank you for both of those things, Jim. What I was hoping to get out of this conversation, all of us together as Resilient Palisades, is really to start a conversation within our community, within Resilient Palisades, about moving our money. We all kind of know, we've heard it talked about, we know we should be doing it, but it's one of those hard things. It's like tidying your room. Like, who wants to do that? There's so many other things that you'd rather be doing, right? So one of the things that really, really impressed me about Jim's program with This Is What We Did was this cohort idea. It's so in line with what we do in Resilient Palisades. We come together as neighbors to help each other do the hard, sometimes the fun things, and sometimes hard things, and sometimes fun and hard things, but to live more environmentally friendly lives. And so I hope that there's some interest in this community in not just in moving your money, but in doing it together. And so what I want to do is just invite you to reach out to me if you're one of the people sitting on this call thinking, hey, yeah, I'd like to get at some point, maybe I'm busy right now and I can only do it in March. It doesn't matter. If at some point you'd like to explore the idea of perhaps being in a cohort with other people from Resilient Palisades, to go through this process. So not each of us is going online and figuring out, well, who's Aspiration Bank? We can spread out the tasks. We can all go away and do some research and come back together, and we can really make it a lot easier and a lot more fun. And then again, as Jim said, the accountability of having other people to answer to about, have you done this, can really make it happen. So I want to invite you after this call, if you're interested in being involved in that way. It's not a commitment, but please reach out to me. You can, my email address is, everybody probably has it in all of their emails. It's just reply to one of the emails you've gotten and say, hey, I'm interested, and I can compile a list, and then we can get together and see from there, what's next. Can we take Jim up? Can we explore creating a cohort? When can we do it? All of those questions. So I just want to thank you all for taking the time to be part of this conversation, be part of the start of something that I hope could be something really meaningful within Resilient Palisades.
And I think it goes without saying, Ingrid, but we will support you any way we can. And like I said, both the Move Your Money and the Effective Climate Conversations. And I put my email in the chat. So call on us. We want to help you. We want to work with you.
Okay. Well, I thank you again, Jim. We really appreciate it. And we hope this is the start of a long relationship. And I look forward to hearing from many of you. Take care.